By the time you walk out in this city, around here, you'll find a billboard from Safaricom or KCB, for example, or Coca-Cola. I understand they spend the highest budget in the world in advertisements. Is there anyone here who can say that he has never, ever tasted Coca-Cola products? Anyone? How come? Talk to me. How come they are still advertising? How come? Why? Did you know their goal of 2000 was to make sure every human being tastes Coca-Cola products? Remote places like Turkana, they carried Coca-Cola products on camelback and gave it for free just to achieve that objective in the remotest part of this world. How come they're still advertising? After they achieved the goal by the end of the year 2000. What do we do as Kenyans? You're keeping hardware. Somebody comes there. Hapa mnakuwaga na M-Pesa. Nakwambia mara ngapi hapa siko M-Pesa? I mean, now tell him as though you are saying it for the first time. Tomorrow he may come to buy hardware. Ama unasikiaga na wapi? Wewe unasikiaga na wapi? No. Just tell him again. Do you know the energy you use to explain, that he's asking the wrong question is much more than tell him kwa M-Pesa ni pale. You spend more energy. Say it as though you are saying it for the first time. Rule number 2. Every time you're communicating, lower your tone. Why? Whenever you raise your tone, you're mad, and madmen are not communicators. Lower your tone. Lower your tone. Lower your tone. By the way, even at home when you're talking to children, lower your tone, especially mothers. Sorry. I'm not trying to be dogmatic here, but there's a higher tendency of mothers shouting more than fathers. There's a higher tendency on average. You can find somebody living in a mansionette, ground floor, shouting at a child upstairs. Wajiko, Wajiko, Wajiko. Please take a walk. It will even cut down your fat levels. Take a walk, take a walk. Take a walk, go to Wajiko. Just take a walk. Yeah, it will reduce your gym hours. Take a walk, take a walk. Because the moment you shout, you're mad. And mad men are not communicators. Look, here's an employee you must release their duties. For sure, they have reached that level. And sometimes you have to make that decision. You are firing them. Do you need to shout, get out of here? Imeisha! Do you know even if you said it in whispers, you have still fired them? You can even give it in a letter without talking to them. Do you know you can shout, now kupige geta next day? Release them nicely. You are still releasing them. You're still releasing them. So lower your tone. The third rule about communication, address the issue. Don't make issues personal. Address the issue. Don't make issues personal. Carol goes home tonight and she realizes the house girl has over-roasted fish. She has given her instructions many times, but she missed it over and over again. Look at me, Carol. Hey, look at me. Look at me. Nakwambia mara ngapi samaki naungua? Hebu fanya kichwa hivi. Uko na network. Please, please. There's nothing wrong with her head. There's something wrong with the fish. Let's talk about the fish problem, not the head problem. If she was able to think like you, she should be in this hall. Correct? That's the reason she's there. So why are you asking about her head problem? Her head is operating at its level. So if you're fired in 2 minutes, they don't have a problem, you have a problem. You have a problem because you're expecting them to resonate at your level. So let's talk about the fish problem, not the head problem. Number 6. To build strong relationships, learn to listen. Learn to listen. Here we go. You are the bus driver. The first stage you pick 10 kids and drop 4. The second stage you pick 6 kids and you drop 2. The last stage you pick 4 kids and drop 2. What is the shoe number of the bus driver? Don't shout. If you know the answer, lift up your hand. Don't shout. Don't shout the answer. What's your shoe number? 10. It is. No, come here. What is your shoe number?
Oh, 7.
No, good, you failed. Sit down. Don't shout the answer. What's the answer?
38.
Sorry?
38.
What's your shoe number?
38.
And what's your shoe number?
38.
You got it. So I'll autograph this book for you. Can you explain? Can you explain the answer?
He asked about the shoe number, but not about the children who are picked on the road. So the shoe number is the same one that I always wear, not about the children that he was picking as the driver. And I was the driver.
Good. Thank you. Some of you are still lost. I said you are the bus driver. All the stories of picking and dropping children were immaterial. The question was, what is the shoe number of the bus driver? The first sentence was, you are the bus driver. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 rules about listening. Ready? Rule number 1. Why listen? Why listen? Number 1. When you listen, you hear what isn't being said. When you listen, you hear what is not being said. We go to Turkey, say Essence 101. People come back with different ideas. Pumping water. Making mabatis. We call it for our county so that we don't have to buy from MRM. You listen to everything people are saying, then you're able to pick what they're not saying. And that becomes a gap and a business opportunity. When you keep saying, you can't identify what people know and what they don't know. But when you listen, you're able to know what they know, and you can identify what they don't know. So when you listen, you hear what isn't being said. When you keep talking, you never know what people don't know. So why listen? Number 2. Why listen? Number 2. When you listen, you learn. When you listen, you learn. It sounds simple, but I want you to think for a moment. Have you ever done this? Every time you open your mouth to speak, you learn nothing? Ever thought of that? Everything you say, you already know. Everything you're saying, you already know, unless you have a psychiatric problem. Right now, you're learning. I'll begin to learn when I sit down this afternoon to listen to you. Because there's nothing I'm saying accidentally. I had planned to say it. You begin to learn when you sit down and listen. So before you invest, say for example, in Centum, listen to the inside story. Somebody might be telling you, I didn't say this, but I'm saying that maybe one of the main directors there is the same director who made Uchumi collapse. No, I didn't say that, did I? I did not, don't quote me. But it's good to listen to the insiders. The challenge again is that a lot of people go to business expecting to know everything. It is true, an entrepreneur must know very many things, but narrowly, not too deeply. And that's the difference between an entrepreneur and a professor. A professor knows one line very, very deeply. Very, very deeply. That cannot be the case for you as a business person. You must know a little bit about HR, a little bit about accounts, not everything, but at least you must know that you must make returns by the 20th of every month. You must know where you're getting your supplies. You must be very divergent without going to details. The details come from the experts. That's the entrepreneur. If you want to study one thing very deeply, to understand taxes very deeply, become an accountant. Stop learning business. You're not an entrepreneur. And that's why many professors cannot run businesses. That's the reason. They can't run businesses. Because you are trained to think in one direction. Sorry, let me use an example of Dr. Mogane. Here's a doctor who is trained one degree, another one. You fathered in which area? Sorry? Pediatrics. I'm not even able to pronounce. He sees life in terms of little children sick. Little children sick. So sometimes when he's dealing with Dollar, the wife, he sees a little girl sick. He's seen Kinyanjui, a little boy sick. Everything. Because he was conditioned to think of little children sick who need to be attended. The only way for him now to think business is to stop thinking of that box called pediatrics. I'm not just in his area, any other area. If you're here, you're trained as an architect, you see life in terms of buildings only. You're not an entrepreneur. I don't know whether you're communicating. Yes. You understand your business is petroleum. That's your business. That's the broad picture. The nitty-gritties of how chemicals are combined to form petrol, leave it. How to come up with a payment system, leave it to IT guys. Derek is an IT fellow. He'll do that for you. You can outsource. But don't be ignorant about what the system should do for you. So you must be widely knowledgeable for you to be a good entrepreneur. Widely knowledgeable. How do you become widely knowledgeable? Listening. Not going to school, no. The school of life. Don't enroll for IT to understand about a payment system. You're wasting time as an entrepreneur. Go to the school of life. So when he's making his presentation, listen. Don't pretend to listen. Listen. So that you listen to the IT fellow. Then a HR person comes. Let's call her today Salome. And she's telling and explaining to you about the staffing process. Just listen. You learn as an entrepreneur on the ground. Listening. The third reason Why listen? When you listen, you avoid generalizations. When you listen, you avoid generalizations. And you become case specific. What are generalizations? Hey, Wakikuyu ni wezi, mimi nawajua. Hey, this is not mimi, nimekaa kwa Wakikuyu. Wezi. What? Your daughter is going to be married in where? Kisumu. Mawe. What are you talking about? Tafadhali mawe, ukabani. Oh, umeisha. Kamote. Wamama ni wale. Different shapes of madazi. Wale. You should listen to men in clubs. Wamama ni wale. Different shapes of madazi. Listen to a girl's talk. All men are the same. All men dog. Retain yours. Why are you leaving your husband? All men are dogs. You know what you're doing? Generalizations. Deal with this Kikuyu. This man. Wahidi hawalipagi. Nani alisema hawalipagi? As an entrepreneur, please we must overcome those dogmas. And deal with this Muhidi. Si makarasinga wote. Unajua makarasinga mimi nawajua, Hapana. Deal with this Karasinga. Deal with this Kibet. Deal with this Otieno. Deal with this Mzungu. Deal with this woman. Don't generalize. Men are like this. Women are like this. No. And that can only come when you listen. When you don't listen, you actually have a lot of presumptions, dogmas, stereotypes. Let's proceed. Number 7. Learn to empathize. Empathize with others. Remember, you're talking about building strong relationships, winning with others. And I'm suggesting to win with others, empathize with people. To empathize means to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Read of a story of a boy who was so ambitious he wanted to become the president of his country. However, he wasn't doing so well in school. The father one time told him, "Do you realize at your age Bill Clinton was getting all this?" The boy paused for a moment, looked at the father's eyeballs and said, "Dad, but you also recognize at your age Bill Clinton was already the US president." Read of another story. A boy wasn't doing well in school. The father lectured him for a whole 1 hour. At the end of the 1 hour lecture, the father asked the young boy, "Son, do you have any question?" The boy said, "Dad, I have only one question. Do you think my foolishness is hereditary or environmental?" And maybe there is something about both. A true story. One day, I was speaking in an AGM 209, and in a high school, one of the schools you all know here in Nairobi, a big school, 5-streamed. And I was in the principal's office. A lady came in there. She had heard me speak before, and she was very upset with the daughter's conduct. She had misbehaved. She gave her some 2 slaps and then made a mistake. "Wewe ng'ombe sana." The girl looked at the mother and said, "Mama, I'm not a ng'ombe. I am a calf." To empathize. Wow. Empathy. Read of a story, some of you have seen it before, of a boy who was scratching the father's car during this time when he was tuning his new car. The father got so upset, began to beat the boy, not knowing he was using a wrench. The boy's hands became fragile when he went in the hospital. Immediately after admission, all the doctors were unanimous in agreement. 4 fingers would be amputated. In that hospital bed, the boy looked at the father and said, "Dad, when shall my fingers grow again?" He couldn't handle it. He got out of that, banged the door behind him. In anger, he went to the car, started beating the car, if you like. In anger, he looked at the scratches again and realized they were not random scratches. The boy had inscribed the words, "Dad, I love you." He committed suicide because of losing it. You know what? Your employee may get the tender late and you're upset, but no amount of shouting will change the fact on the ground. The tender is too late. You may bang the walls, but the tender is too late. Another time they may get the tender in time, but they forget to insert the billboard. It doesn't matter how you react to them, the billboard is still not there. A supplier may still get it wrong for the 4th time. A mechanic, you gave your car because you stepped on the accelerator one morning and the car didn't pick. He may return it with a more complex problem. But I still insist, empathize with them. They are more frustrated than you are. They may have wanted to prove their prowess, but they can't. Put yourself in other people's shoes. Let me say this. There are things you can change in life. The next session that I'll be doing with you, which I want to talk about maybe for 2 minutes in the afternoon, I'll talk about temperaments. I know everyone here knows temperament. I wouldn't come to repeat what you know. What I'll be doing in September, I'll talk to you about temperaments in a different way. I'll show you how your personality affects how you eat, how you sleep. I'll show you how your temperament affects the way you drive your car, the way you relate with people, your customers, employees. In fact, I'll show you how it affects your sex life for those who are married. I'm serious. By the way, I say these things in public. I say them on TV. Don't sympathize with me. I'll show you how your temperaments affect how you laugh and how you're looking at me right now. I'll show you all that. I'll show you all that. But you know what? Why am I saying this? You can't change your personality. And that's the reason I want to discuss about it next. You can't change your gender. You can't change your IQ. People don't know this. People don't know this. You're having the same IQ you had when you're 2 years old or 15 years old. Your IQ is never changed by the amount of information you acquire. The only thing you change is your EQ, your emotional intelligence. That's why sometimes you find a mkokoteni person sharper than a professor. If they're both involved in a crisis, you'll find how he's going to resolve the issues too fast. His brain thinks very fast. He didn't school for many reasons. Maybe when he was growing up, nobody motivated him. Maybe there was no school fees. Maybe he lacked the motivation to work hard. But that does not make him dull. It doesn't. You don't change your IQ because of papers you get. But you can change your EQ. You can't change your gender. You can't change your personality. And I'll prove to you when we meet in September. The only thing you can change is your emotional intelligence. And that's what I'm trying to do this session. It's how you control your emotions, how you relate with others. That one is in your hands. You can work on yourself. You can work on your intelligence level. You can acquire more information, but that's intact. That's why the average professor got a C all through, but they were able to stay in there. And the bright people like you always are challenging where they are. You know, always. If you see people challenging where they are, because they get bored very fast. So you keep challenging. Professors relax there forever. So let's learn to empathize with others. Number 8. Look for the good. Look for the good. Be a good fighter. Be a good fighter. Be a good fighter. Whenever you're dealing with your employees, your employers, your suppliers, your family, as an entrepreneur, if we must go to the next level, be a good fighter. Don't be a fault fighter. Some people are gifted fault fighters as though there's a reward for it. They will look for an error everywhere. You see, I teach project management at the University of Nairobi and JKUAT on part-time basis, and I begin my lectures by telling students what I'm about to tell you right now. You develop people in the same manner in which you mine gold. When you're mining gold, you remove tons and tons and tons of dirt. But you don't go in the quarry looking for the dirt. You go in there looking for the gold. You develop people in the same principle. You don't develop people by looking for the dirt. You develop people by looking for the gold. You don't develop people by looking for the fault. You develop people by looking for the good. There is something good in every person. If only you care to dig for the good. If you're looking for the fault, you're going to get a myriad of them. Allow me to digress for only 2 minutes and take you back home. Then I'll bring you back to your business. If a child comes home and they have dropped from a B+ to a C+, you're very upset as a parent. Chances are very high, if you looked at that report card so closely, they improved in one subject. Let's call it today Kiswahili. They may have improved in Kiswahili from a B- to an A-. Start in there. How did you improve in Kiswahili? What lesson can we borrow and apply in your other subjects? Because if I start with the negative, they block. It's faced with resentment. If I start with the positive, they open up. But suppose they didn't improve in any subject, but they're good in extracurricular activities. Start in there. How come in drama or in music or piano or swimming or basketball or rugby, you're doing so well to national level? What leaf can we borrow to apply in your academics? Because success principles are fundamentally the same. Positive mental work attitude and consistency and persistence and good time management and teamwork and so on and so forth. How can we apply that in your academics? Worst case scenario. Suppose you have this girl not doing well at all in school, not even in extracurricular activities, but your daughter is a beauty queen. Then we have a case for the jury. You can start there. Some careers just require beautiful girls who never confuse chat for short. And they have the job. Isn't it, Helen? And they have the job. So tell her, honey, you are such a queen. She starts to warm up and prepare her to be a cabin crew. Prepare her to be a personal assistant. Prepare her to be a Lupita Nyong'o. Prepare her for relevant careers. In fact, she'll come and give you more money because those careers are more paying. There is something good in every person. That's my message. So here is a situation whereby you'll be confronted by employees who have a lot of faults. I suggest you're likely to have more faults than they have. You'll be confronted by customers who are very difficult. They'll even tell you how they're going to tell everyone else about how fake your products are. Hakuna mtu tabia hapa ni fake. They will come there and shout. Don't reach their level. Look for the good and start there, then they'll come down. Am I suggesting you don't punish misconduct? Absolutely not. In fact, allow me to suggest quickly 3 rules about punishing unwanted behavior. Number 1, never miss a chance to punish people when they do the wrong thing. Never miss a chance to punish employees when they mess up. Because when you do that, you push the boundaries. You encourage the behavior. When you ignore it, wish it away, put it under the carpet, it's bound to be repeated. Let me tell you, gentlemen and ladies, people love people who are principled. People expect and respect you for being principled. Can I tell you the truth? I'm surprised that Angela is here. Angela is like my daughter. I was very hard on her when she was working on her master's degree. Would you believe she's here? Why? People expect and respect you for being principled. Isn't it? They're like, Kube is in my interest. Oh, I think this guy genuinely loves me. Hata ikiwa ananichapa viboko, Sindio, Patrick? Rather than I tell you you're doing the right thing when you're doing the wrong thing. Am I communicating to someone? Secondly, about correcting. Don't overdo it, don't underdo it. Find when to whip and when to KRS. You'll always have to look for a moment. If you whip hard, next time make sure you massage a bit. And the third one, and the most important rule about corrections, praise in public, reprimand in privacy. Praise in public, reprimand in privacy. Never ever correct anyone in the presence of another person. You destroy their ego. You destroy their self-esteem. You injure them emotionally. And then it is no longer a corrective measure. You know what happens? They end up developing a defense mechanism. They start accusing you for the mistakes because they question your intentions. But if you're the two of you, they are likely to trust the intentions to be corrective. Having said that, I want to say something radical here. We achieve more results by what we praise than by what we condemn. Put it otherwise. What we praise is more likely to flourish than what we condemn. Because what you praise is more likely to flourish than what you condemn. Rule number 1. You can't reward others unless and until you learn how to reward yourself. You can't reward others unless and until you learn how to reward yourself. You can't reward others unless and until you learn how to reward yourself. What is rewarding yourself as an entrepreneur? Rewarding yourself means you are addressing your posterity when you'll not be able to work. Don't do a business without going for holiday to have some reflective moments. And unfortunately, there are many Kenyans, January 1st to December 31st, they will never replenish. They'll never replenish. And that's what happens with entrepreneurs. Most of the time, when you're in your workplace, you had some 21-day official leave, and others that you cooked up in the name of sickness or picking up a child. But here you are all alone, and you cannot come up with a deliberate way to switch off your phone, your tablet, and just relax. Celebrate milestones. Don't ignore them. You've made some good products, sales, and close down shops. Leave others people to run. You know what? When you trust people, you have a higher chance of winning. John C. Maxwell says, when you trust people, you'll be wrong 3% of the time. When you don't trust people, you'll be wrong 97% of the time. Do the law of averages and learn to trust people. Just trust them. Let them run the show. There is no single company that has been built on geniuses. Every single corporate was built by average people, average performers who are given the opportunity. Rule number 2 about rewarding others, keep your promise. Keep your promise. About 6 years ago, I was privileged to speak to counseling heads in the country. It was a national event. The MC, who was a high school teacher, stood up after my presentation and said something very interesting. She is a teacher of geography, and her class wasn't performing well. So she went to class and told the girls in a 3-stream school, whoever gets an A during the mocks, 1,000 bob. Give me a high five. Give me a high five. Geography, 1,000 bob. Remember what the teacher said? Geography, 1,000 bob. It's a geography promise. In geography, why are you reading maths? It's a geography promise. Geography? Do you remember? Please, just ignore that physics. Geography, 1,000 bob. Out of 169 girls, 144 got an A. She went hiding. You know, the principal and the chair of the board had to convene an urgent meeting. Negotiated with the girls to give them 500 after KCSE, and the teacher went back to class. Don't promise what you can't give. Now, February this year, I was giving a speech somewhere, and there were many entrepreneurs. One of them stood up, and he said, look, let me explain to you, Dr. Harry, this is construction. It's different. How it works here, I just promise the workers anything so that they finish the mjengo. After that, I ignore them. I asked him, how long have you been in construction? 2 years. Yeah, that explains. Because you can't go anywhere. You can't go anywhere. You tell people, hey, perform. If you perform very well, I'm going to buy you a tablet. I'll buy you, mark my words, I'll buy you a what? A tablet. After the work, I buy you Panadol. I knew you were going to get a migraine. So this is a tablet I had promised. Panadol. Nilijua utapata headache after this contract. Now you lose your integrity. Keep your word. Keep your word. Are you there with me? Are you there with me? Yes. Yeah. The third rule about reward, the reward must be appreciated by the recipient. The reward must be appreciated by the recipient. That means the giver doesn't determine the worth. The receiver determines the worth. So as you cross over, don't ignore, because employees are at the front line and customers are the bloodline of the business. Employees are the front line and customers are the bloodline. So even your customers, just don't ignore it and take it for granted. Take time, go buy something at the end of the year at Christmas, spread some baskets. You know, there's too much corruption in Kenya. So every time you're trying to do the right thing, it's always misconstrued to be corruption. There is no culture, there is no religion, there is no race where you are taught to see people empty-handed. It doesn't exist. Even when Jesus healed the sick, he still told them to go to the temple, not empty-handed, according to the instructions that were given by Moses. But because we are so corrupt, our brain system is so corrupt, every time you do the right thing, it's taken to be corruption. I tell you this, ignore it and appreciate your customers. Let's go on. Let's cross over to number 9. Are you there? Yes. Number 9, learn to respond, not to react. Learn to respond, not to react. I'll never forget one morning, Marcy and I were driving to work, and that's about 7 or so years ago. I was overtaking a certain car. I was not in a hurry. There was a pickup behind us with 3 young men, but they were seriously in a hurry. They were extremely offended by my overtaking speed. As they passed me by, they did me something like this. I don't think they were blessing me. Are these blessings in Kenya? Do you think they were blessing my life? You know, I never answered them back. You ask me why. Those guys were not telling me. They were telling the driver of the car was in. I'm the one who was driving. Their distraction was not Kinyanjui. The distraction was this vehicle. Why shouldn't I answer them back? A lot of Kenyans call names and they start shouting back at each other. For me, I have no clue whether they are running away from a crime scene. I have no clue whether they are rushing a child beaten by a cobra to hospital. I have no clue whether they are high on substance abuse. By answering them back, I allow them to beat their ceiling that is too low for me to reach. I allow them to pour their emotions on me. They didn't know where to pour the baggage, and I'm the available garbage basket. I allow them to add my day negative energy and perhaps days to come. In other words, I give them control over my day to day and days to come. Why should I do that? And I insist they are not telling me. Any other person would have been done the same by these guys. Why am I taking it personal? Do you know how many here would confess they have been victims of taking it personal with a matatu driver? Do you agree with me? You can't confess right now. But you know the guy doesn't know you. The dude has no clue that you even exist. But he controlled your attitude that day. This is my challenge. You know, 208 April, I was speaking to all the principals. There was a national event. I was privileged to be the guest speaker. On my way back, I received a call from a lady who identified herself as Mrs. Simeo. And she asked me to go to her school because there was a series of crises. And I obliged. I worked out my diary. And on that material morning, as I drove to that school in those days, there were heavy coffee bushes between International School of Kenya and her school. I didn't know where it was. There's a matatu that blocked me along the way. I was getting nervous. It was approaching 8 o'clock in the morning. And the first topic that morning was time management. By God's grace, the matatu guy parked on the side and I was able to overtake him. I parked slightly ahead of him. I came to the matatu driver, and before I spoke to him, he spoke to me and said, Mzee, sina shida. I didn't know Mzee until that day. Then I asked him, where is Gathega High School? And he pointed. It was just about 500 meters away, hidden by some trees. You can imagine my shock as I reached that school to realize the principal and 4 other teachers were in that matatu. Had I called them names and then I go to that school telling them, learn to be controlled, don't react, learn to respond. Do you think they would have listened to my message? I gave that story one day, later that year, September. I was doing training for senior management Ketepa. In the course of my speech, I was doing like I'm doing with you here the whole day. The then CEO, Tim Chege, stood up and said, you know what, Kinyanjui? I have a personal experience I want to share with you before you proceed. I was going to my office industrial area. At the Uhuru Highway, Haile Selassie roundabout, there's another motorist that roughed me up. He was so much in a hurry. There was no good fellowship between us. As he sped off, he did something to me with his middle finger. I leave it to your creative imagination. My career does not allow me to illustrate. And then he muttered equivalent words. Why? He was in a hurry. Why? He was headed for an interview. Where? Ketepa. He did then realize the chairman of the panel looks familiar. He told him, sir, you look familiar. The CEO stood up, gave him a standing ovation, a nice warm handshake, and told him, yes, very much so. At the roundabout this morning describes our familiarity. And the fellow knew the interview is over. Why? He reacted to the situation. Learn to respond, not to react in every situation. What is reacting? What is responding? React is negative, response is positive. Classic example, if you go to a doctor and the doctor says your body is reacting on the treatment, you get nervous. The doctor says we're going to change the prescription. If however 2 weeks later you go for a checkup and the doctor says your body is responding on the treatment, you relax because response is positive. It's positive. Salome, can I make it particular for you? This is the deal. You married? You write a text to your husband. You're very upset. You're very upset. Just before you click the send button, I suggest you take a walk. Breathe fresh air. Come read the text. Chances are you're not going to send it in its original format. And that's the difference between reacting and responding. Erastus, you are a regional manager. You write an email in anger. You're very upset with this employee. You want to fire them. You've written that email and you're conscious you're in anger. I'm suggesting, please leave the email right there after writing it. Go breathe fresh air for 5 minutes. Come back, reread the email. You might delete it or restructure it. And that's the difference between responding and reacting. Why? We all get annoyed, all of us. God gets annoyed. But then he gives us an advice. Don't let the sun go down in your anger. There's nothing wrong with getting annoyed. It's human. But it's what you do with your anger. I'm a victim of some of the things I'm sharing with you. I've ever clicked a set button. You know, we're going to be real here throughout this club. We're going to be vulnerable to each other. I've ever done that myself. How many here have ever done that? You clicked a set button in anger in your phone. Are we not victims? Let's be real. We are work in progress. If I was perfect, I wouldn't be on this planet. I would have been airborne, lifted by rapture power. I'm like you. We are the same as human beings. What we are saying here is that each one of us need to be more conscious, more sensitive. Learn to respond, not to react. And I know I don't want to provoke some moods, but it's very possible some seated here have lost more serious relationships because you reacted. We can't change the past. We can't turn back the hands of time. We can't change one iota about yesterday, but you can do something about tomorrow. It's a lesson we have learned, but we don't need to repeat it. We don't need to repeat it. Number 10 and the last one, believe in others. Believe in others. Remember, we are talking about winning with others. And I conclude, in my opinion, with the most important point. Believe in others. Let me first give you an illustration. Equity Bank is doing something called Wings to Fly. KCB Bank is doing a similar thing, and maybe other banks. I'm aware of those two. What's the concept behind this? In my considered opinion, when Equity Bank or KCB decided to do that, they didn't do this for the sake of the kids. I need you to know this. CSR is not done for the sake of the community. It's a business strategy. They know once this child graduates and they have benefited from our program, they don't care what the other banks are offering. Even if this bank is more expensive, this bank that helped me to go to school, that's why I'm coming. And I'm not going to come alone. I'm coming with my spouse. And I'm coming with my friends. And if I become a PS, I'm coming the government ministry. Are you with me? Can you see the strategy? Say this after me. I can get whatever I want in life if I just help enough people get what they want.